Hello, my name is Atticusmj, and I am here to serve thee in these times of need. I hope you had an enjoyable grand class, as times have changed, as ye know. So come into the Velvet Room and dine, for that thee know. So today, we're going to check out Persona 2 Eternal Punishment, the sequel to Persona 2 Innocent Sin, the title that confuses new Persona people in not realizing there were 6 titles instead of 5 main entries, and the last of the original trilogy before going into the modern trilogy of, well, currently the modern trilogy of modern Persona. So, I have to get this out of the way. There is pretty much no way we can talk about Eternal Punishment without really spoiling Innocent Sin. The game literally takes place after Innocent Sin, so it's pretty much not possible to not spoil the ending and stuff and things that happen in it. So I'm going to have to put an immediate spoiler warning for anyone who hasn't played Innocent Sin and doesn't want spoilers for it. You've been warned. Anyway, moving on from there though, let us start. So, picking up right after Innocent Sin, where the world was fucking destroyed except for one Japanese city that's flying in space, you and your team reverted the world backward by sacrificing their friendship to not know each other so said events wouldn't happen. Now, you play as Maya this time, who died at the end of Innocent Sin, but now is alive now that time has been reverted into another world. And this is a concept that is arguably dire consequences on having a split timeline world thing that is slowly getting more convoluted as more Persona games show up and show. There's more of a multi-universe thing going on, but that's a whole different discussion now. So you play as Maya this time, and the game starts out in a similar sense of tracking down a rumor related to Joker, just as Innocent Sin did. But the difference is there were both similarities that are parallel, and at the same time there were many differences to events that happen in Eternal Punishment. In a way, it's like it's trying to show you things that happen and then shock you with a prying rod, saying, "Ha! You did that." But you begin the journey tracking the Joker rumor again, but this time the Joker rumor is different. Well, last time in Innocent Sin, the Joker rumor was granting people's desires by calling him. This time, however, instead, calling the Joker and saying a name, the Joker would go and kill said person, which obviously isn't a good thing for most people. So, other than Maya and Tatsu, you have a completely new cast of party members that join you this time around. Maya split from a partner in crime this time, so you got a whole new team of people that join you. And returning cast members from Persona 1 showing up as well. One of my complaints in Innocent Sin was Persona 1's cast that show up are almost entirely Easter eggs in Innocent Sin. And depending on some of your actions, you could even miss other scenes with them. But almost all the interactions with them were Easter eggs, side quest things. In Eternal Punishment, they made them actually a part of the plot that you couldn't miss. Legitimately, because one of them out of 2 of the characters will join you, and several of them have to do with the plot at certain portions of the game, so you get to see and meet many of the characters, which is a very nice thing, because it makes 1, be more curious to go check out Persona 1. Because at the end of Innocent Sin's review, I pretty much said, I don't feel like you're being needed to go and check out Persona 1. Like, there doesn't feel like a need to know the context of it. And this one makes you feel like you should go play Persona 1, which I think is good, because Persona 1 needs encouragement to be played. It hasn't aged as well, sadly, as the duology of Persona 2s. If you're going in from Innocent Sin to Eternal Punishment, we do have a few things we gotta go over. First thing, the only official localization of Innocent Sins on the PSP, and the only official localization of Innocent Sins on the PS1. Eternal Punishment did get a PSP version, but for some reason that wasn't localized. Excuses were given, but we didn't get. There are fan translations of it, and there is a fan translation of Innocent Sin on the PS1. It is important to note that the PSP versions of Persona 1 and Innocent Sin were greatly changed in a lot of ways. Now, Persona 1 had a lot of negative changes. Innocent Sin took a lot of the criticism that got and pretty much kept a lot of the good stuff. Like, they threw out a lot of music in the Persona 1 PSP version. They kept almost everything except for, like, I think one song in the Innocent Sin PSP release, because a lot of people didn't like what they did with Persona 1's PSP release. So there were a lot of different changes done still in Innocent Sin's PSP release. So it's important to note that I am strictly talking about the PS1 release of Eternal Punishment, because the PSP version carried over a lot of those similarities. So as a quick thing about the PSP release, there was some added content, and the theme was kind of a green color, where Innocent Sin's PSP version used red as a theme of its color. The menus in the PSP version are a greenish color on that. Now, the menus are the first thing I will want to get into with when talking about the combat here, because they're very different from the PSP and PS1. And the PSP version got a lot of criticism because of its menu system in combat. The menu system in the PSP versions does look nice and goes well with the kind of themes and stuff they're going with, but when you play, and I said this when I was playing Innocent Sin, I was very interested to see what the original menu system was like, because the menu systems in the PSP and the PS1 releases are pretty much identical to each other, so it was going to give me a taste of, obviously, what it was originally like. Because I've always heard that was better. And I would have to say I agree. How the battle system menu is presented in the PS1 version of Eternal Punishment, I feel, is functionally better than what it was in the PSP. Now, the PSP's big problem with its menu system is that it's very sluggish. And I couldn't find a lot of information on Eternal Punishment's like people talking about it. So, and I don't own the PSP version of Eternal Punishment, so I can't really discuss whether that was fixed, because that was my big problem with the battle menu in the PSP version of Innocent Sin, is it was very sluggish and slow to go through. If it was a little more fine-tuned, the way they did it probably wouldn't have been as bad. But as much as the menu system in Eternal Punishment, the PSP, the PS1 version of Eternal Punishment is very plain and ugly looking. It's gray menus. You can change the background up a little bit, like some PS1 RPGs used to do. But the default menu is just ugly gray backgrounds with the white text. Nothing theme, fancy, or anything. But like I said, the functionality of it is good. Now, if you don't know how combat works, this is your first time hearing anything about Persona 2, combat works very differently from a lot of traditional JRPGs. It's an interesting idea, honestly. Basically, you go to strategy, set up everyone's action, what you want them to do, and then you just do battle, and it keeps going until you cancel it. So as long as you don't want to change anything, you could just, it's essentially set to auto battle on those commands. Now, what's shitty about doing that is it is annoying when you want to just simply heal or revive or cure something. But it's obviously less frustrating in the PS1 version versus the PSP version. Because the big problem with the two versions and how they did the menus for combat is you have to assign every single character individually's command over again in the PSP version. While in the PS1 version of Eternal Punishment, you can just go to strategy, select the one character you want to change the order of, and then you can just go and say, that's what I want. So you don't have to go through every single person's command over and over again, which is very, very, very nice. Because, I mean, like I said, when you just want to do, like, a quick change, like somebody you made heal, change to attack thing, you just change it, finish. You can also do all-out attack. Now, the PSP version did add, like, a Winemble move, but that was kind of non-void if you used all-out attack, because it wouldn't Winemble. They should have made that where it didn't disable it. That was a weird thing. There isn't a Winemble mode in this. It's not really necessary, like I said, when you can just change the individual portions' attacks. You can also bring up fusions quickly and easy. The only thing that's annoying doing fusions in the PS1 version is when you do it, it always sets it to the top. So depending on what kind of move it is, if you're trying to set it into a certain time slot, like say you want somebody to heal last, to try and heal after like a hard-hitting attack or something, you have to manually change the order then. And the order of everyone, there's clearly some kind of different system of messing with people's orders. Like every set of turns, it shuffles everyone into a different order. So if you want to keep doing fusions, you have to usually go back, look, make sure it stays the same, because sometimes they'll reorder everyone's turns. I'm not really sure how the game dictates people's orders exactly, their turn order exactly. But in the PSP version, you can more consistently keep going. So they messed with that a little. Now, Contact was also vastly changed between Innocent Sin and Eternal Punishment. Innocent Sin carried on with Persona 1's system, where each character has a multitude of actions. This time, however, every individual character has one action. To get more actions, you have to combine them with different people. So when it's the beginning, you only have one action per character. Combining into duo and trio teams, you'll be able to bring in many, many more actions into the Contact system, making what I would say the Contact system more harder and maybe a little more confusing if you're going in it from Innocent Sin, because I admit I was a little confused, like, wait a minute, what's all my options? It's a little bit different, but I think it adds a little more challenge to the Contact system. On the same hand, I think the Contact system was a little actually easier, ironically, though, when interacting with demons. I didn't feel like there was so much failure. There's a little more understanding on what to do, but that might have been just from going from Innocent Sin to Eternal Punishment, as many of the enemies are same returning. Some might have gotten some updated sprites like Jack Frost and Pyro Jack and that. They actually got completely new sprites in Eternal Punishment from the ones they had in Innocent Sin. So a few were updated, but many of the monsters are returning, though because of how they changed the Contact system, there are some differences on what they like and stuff too. So don't just always assume, oh, that's that one demon, I know exactly what to do. Some things are a bit different on that. You can also analyze on the PS1 version, gives you pretty much the generic information on them and that. And it does retain the card system from Innocent Sin, which, as I said, was a big improvement over Persona 1, having an individual card for every monster in Persona 1. Instead, basically you get the arcana of the creature you're contacting with, and you turn in so many of, like, say, the Magician Arcana cards to get a new Magician persona, which still involves a lot of tedium, but is a vastly easier system than what, because Persona 1 was such a long fucking system to do that. Fusions and everything pretty much play out the same. You still visit the Velvet Room, talk to Eagle, infuse your personas and stuff. Now, they did do your perfect final ultimate personas differently in this one. While it's still the same on how you acquire it, you need a special item, and if you miss it, you fucking miss it. But you do need a special item to get your ultimate persona. What's different in Eternal Punishment versus Innocent Sin, in Innocent Sin, you just had to get the one item and stuff and make the right choices, and you would get your ultimate persona. But in Eternal Punishment, with the item, it lets you fuse your final persona, which allows you to customize it. This was a nice idea. So that way, you don't, because, let's face it, if you got everyone's ultimate persona in Innocent Sin, you virtually had really no reason to fucking not use them outside of healing Willy. Because they could do Grand Cross, Mortal, just basically everything constantly. There were very few enemies that resisted Grand Cross. You could spam it on everything. So, like, outside of healing, like, everyone's ultimate personas are what you should use in Innocent Sin. And there was no way to customize them or anything. This makes some variants, so you can do you want to, like, give them a defensive move? How do you want to give them an extra stat? Like, how do you want to do it? And I think it was a nice idea, so that way not everyone is at the end game using the exact same ultimate persona setup unless they're trying to do some kind of challenge. You can get a little change in it. I like that. Sadly, I did miss one kill of those ultimate persona in my playthrough because I didn't know how they were going to do ultimates. That is sadly, you know, the downer about playing blindly. But I gave that kill basically healing the healing job while everyone else just nuked shit anyway. Ultimately, though, you will have a lot of the same experience from Innocent Sin. Now, another thing I complained about with Innocent Sin is there was only one side dungeon in Innocent Sin. It's boring. It's a stupid warehouse, and it's basically just full of several Easter egg side quest things, and it's just meh. Eternal Punishment wamped up much better on side content. There were multiple side dungeons, which many of them I actually missed. You have to go out, find them and stuff, using the rumor system and things, or talk to certain NPCs. But there are actually several side dungeons. Oddly enough, there were multiple in the CD shop in town. There was multiple that have to do with that one, oddly enough. And the rumor system is a lot more fleshed out, in my opinion. There's a debate on which rumor system was better, Innocent Sin or Eternal Punishment. I kind of lean on Eternal Punishment having the more superior rumor system. And now, here's my case on the rumor system. So, in Innocent Sin's rumor system, you basically had the choice of between getting really good stuff with bad sellback, neutral stuff with, like, either neutral sellback, good sellback, or shitty sellback, or shitty items with really good sellback and that. So you basically, your choices were really good items and not really selling items for a good price, or shitty stuff but you could sell stuff for lots of money. Like, those were generally your big issues. You didn't have a lot of choices that really affected on what kind of items. And that's kind of what Eternal Punishment does with a few shops. A few shops, one in particular, has completely different accessories depending on a choice you make. And you're really dictating what kind of things some shops have more than like whether they have good or bad things. And I think that was a nicer choice. Now, there ain't as many of those choices, as most of them just unlock the shop. Now, what they did more so is there's a lot of bizarre side things you could do. Like, there's one that actually chains a shopkeeper that creates a different effect as a joke. But there's also a chance that instead you'll be given an option to buy, like, I think it was an expensive dress. Like, it has basically a double outcome in one or the other happens, which can make different people's blind playthroughs interesting. And what's funny about that one is, like, I tried it, and I got the one where the shopkeeper went away, and I was like, I don't get the... Because I saved Scummy to see what it did, and I was like, I don't get this. And then later in the game, I tried it again, and instead the shopkeeper had a new, like, dress for sale there, and I'm just like, huh. Weird. It's just a different random outcome of that. But I feel like the rumors were a lot more interesting in Eternal Punishment. There were a few different ones that do a few wacky oddball things here and there. I don't obviously want to spoil all of them of that. Plus, there's a nice side one you can find if you willing to dig hard enough into the game. Like I said, there's a lot of side content. I actually missed out on that. Outside of that, you're really looking at a very similar experience to Innocent Sin with, you know, minor tweaks that they took on top of things. Now, the story progression is ultimately really different from Innocent Sin. While, like I said, it likes to show off a lot of similar events, but at the same time, it's going, especially by the end, it's going in a very different direction on what's happening. But I want to save that for spoilers of that. Ultimately, I really did enjoy the game, but I do have some other problems that I had with it. So, a common problem I had in Persona 1 and in Innocent Sin, again, those were the PSP versions I played through. But a common problem I had is during negotiations, a lot of times demons would tell me I'm too low level. But because they made the games easier, I'd be like, well, I feel overpowered. And you're telling me I'm low level to be able to make a contract with you. And it's like, because I don't want to like over level. It was really annoying to get newer personas. I'm sad to say, even though that the original Eternal Punishment, as far as I understand, was not messed with difficulty-wise on the PS1 in America, as they did with Persona 1 on the PS1, where they did mess with a lot of stuff. I'm sad to say that I still found that problem in Eternal Punishment. About mid to near end game, I was still actually finding enemies that were saying I was too low level. Now, not as often, and it mostly happened the most near the end of the game, but I was still having the situations at times where they say I was too low level, which is weird considering I ended the game in the high 60s, early 70s range. I'm like, I'm at the end of the game. You're saying I'm too low level. The fuck? I'm like, what the hell? It's weird. Now, the difficulty thing is something else to talk about, too. Like I said, the PSP versions dumbed down the difficulty. They really messed up the bosses, in my opinion, in Innocent Sin on the PSP. So, how's Eternal Punishment? Now, I always heard, even with the PS1 versions, Eternal Punishment was purposely made harder than Innocent Sin, even on the PS1. And I will tell you, it is fucking harder. Several of the bosses were lengthy, grueling, heart-pounding, beat me face into the door hard for different situations, whether it be I didn't have the right layout and it just made the fight a long, grueling fight that I still was able to win, to other instances where I kept getting my face mopped into the ground. Many of the bosses are unforgiving in this game, and they can be a good challenge for you to go back to the drawing board to figure out. There was one boss, though. Many of the bosses I think were fine, but one boss I have to bitch about. In the late game, there was this one boss that regens health every turn, and I just don't understand the point of him at all. Because what is he testing? At that point, you can get all the best healing items, you'll have shitloads of money, so you likely have giant fat stacks of all those items, so you can always regen all your SP, one heal yourself and everything. But if you can't out damage him, which he has multiple attacks that do a lot of damage, so you have to heal yourself, it was hard to outpace his regen, because if it wasn't for the regen, he would just be dead. So it was like the only real argument you could make with him is he was just testing, could you do more damage than his regen, basically. Which I feel like was pointless in a situation where you basically have max item inventory of SP and HP items. Like, that kind of test feels pointless. Because I'm not being limited on my capability of healing anything, and it certainly wasn't necessary as bosses after him didn't prove that I needed to do more damage. I mean, it's not like an MMO thing where there's a timer on this fight or anything. I felt like he was needless. Call it being salty, you can if you want. I just kind of felt like that one boss was needless. Outside that, many of the bosses posed great challenges, and if you didn't have the right setup or anything, and weren't lucky enough to still be able to finish them off, you just have to go to the drawing board, relook at your personas and stuff. So, it was pretty much a good challenge in my opinion. You could argue some fights might have, depending on your setup, might have been a little more grueling. The other major complaint, similar to Innocent Sin, there are several dungeons with pitfalls. I hate pitfalls. I have grown very stagnating with pitfall dungeons. Once in a while, having some kind of pitfall section's okay, but for some reason, the Persona 2 games love pitfalls, and I have no idea why. And Eternal Punishment does not really line up on it. There were several dungeons with lots of pitfalls you'll go through over and over and over and over again. And it's just, with the high encounter rate, which is still high in this, it is just so annoying. It's so annoying. It's just such a cheap way to get extra time length. Speaking of length, you might be wondering, how long is this game anyway? Well, let's put it this way. The clock stopped moving for me. It went to 99 hours and it stopped. It can't go beyond that. It doesn't pull a Final Fantasy 9 where it resets to 0000 or anything. My clock went max and it stopped there. So I don't know how long it took me, but it took me over that much time. Though, to be fair to note, I did do a lot of the casino and stuff to try out some of the new goodies. The casino has some newer goodies and then stuff. So, keep that in mind. But it did take me some lengthy time. And like I said, I didn't do a lot of the side stuff. And there's a lot more side stuff this time. So, it could be a pretty lengthy game. On top of that, there are 2 different routes you can go in the game. When you meet the Persona 1 cast, you can get one of the 2 characters that can temporarily join you for a portion of the game. And they have separate dungeons they go to. And there is a extra side thing you could do if you replay the game. Because when you finish the game, you save. And you'll see a picture of the character you chose to join you. If you replay the game and experience the other one, you can unlock a super dungeon with the most super of super final bosses in the game in that dungeon. If you Deal. And I hear it's really hard. And I don't know if I'll ever do that in the future. Maybe one day I'll give it a try. Maybe I have to replay the whole game to do it, which is always sucky. Like, that's what I've been doing with Persona 5 for ages now, is replaying it to do the super boss in that one. Maybe one day. Maybe one day. But there was lots of stuff to be done and stuff. I really did enjoy the game, though. But I still feel like it ironically had some of my complaints from the PSP Innocent Sin, which makes me feel like that even if it was the PS1 version, some of those complaints would still exist. So I'm happy to know that not everything was simply because they messed with the enemies in the PSP versions. But it is a very enjoyable game. Definitely recommend. It's kind of a hard sale for the game if you want physically, though, because let's put it this way. Let's take a look at eBay right now. The price that it goes for. Because even for Innocent Sin on the PSP is quite expensive. So let's see. The cheapest listings for Eternal Punishment on the PS1 is for a grand total. Well, there's a lot of Japanese versions, though. The Japanese version's pretty easy to get. You can get for like $20-$30. The cheapest American version is $199 for disc only. And then we start getting into cribs that are $200 plus. So, yes, if you're looking for a physical copy, oh my gosh, $300, $400, oh lord, the fuck. Yeah, you'll, if you're on a budget, you probably want to get the PS1 version of the Japanese game. Or just get the PSP version of the Japanese game, maybe, if you're more inclined, since that's region-free and easier to play versus trying to configure a way to play the PS1. Because there's no easy region-free way to do that. Oof. Oof, I say. Oof. That's a heavy hitter, though. Luckily, though, the game is on PSN, and you can play it on the PSP. I believe it works on Vita, and it's on the PS3. So that is definitely a better route there for you. Because, oof. Oof. I mean, it's hard to justify spending $200. $200. That is a lot of freaking money. I mean, I love owning the physical versions of the games, obviously, but that's just hard sale, though. And see, the price for... Let's see. Price for it... Google's not showing it up on the store. Uh-oh. That's weird. Let me just go to the PSN store and look it up that way. Of course, with the new store update, they fucked up everything, you know. So. I think it was $14.99, I think, for it. But yeah, you can play on PS3, PSP, because most PS1 titles do play on the PSP. Because I type in Persona 2 and I get nothing but Persona 5 stuff in the search results. Oh my goodness, how many pages? I just won Persona 2. Why is everything with 5 showing up? Why is Call of Duty showing up? What? Is Persona 2 not on the PSN anymore? Go. The stupid store pages. What did they do with this fucking, like, the old... Oh yeah, I remember now, actually. The update actually removed all the PS3 shit, so that's why you can't see them. That's why Google can't show... Oh, yeah. Fuck. I forgot about that. Yeah, they did a stupid update where you can no longer see PSP, PS3 and Vita shit on the web browser store, so fuck. I gotta look those up prior now. Thanks, Sony, for making everything worse. Bastards. I think it was like $14.99 or something, but either way, buying it digitally is obviously the cheaper route for the English localization version, but obviously it'll be your choice on whether you want to spend a shitload of money for physical copies, American physical copy, or a low price for the physical Japanese, or just buy the localized version digitally. That'll be your option. But yeah, keep in mind, you'll have to be either on a PS3, PSP, or Vita if you want to buy it. You can't get it off the browser now because of how they retardedly updated the storefront, which is so stupid. I don't know what the fuck they were thinking. They made it so much harder to buy stuff for older systems on their fucking website. Like, it's so stupid. So, yeah, for a second there I was like, did they remove it? Wow, that's gonna suck. Would have got bad news, everyone. Oh, that would have been fucking awful. I think Persona 2 Eternal Punishment, though, is a really nice step higher up than Innocent Sin was in a lot of its elements in that. So, I think I would give it a good $40 value today. I think it's definitely a good, enjoyable game. So, I definitely recommend it. And, like I said, I think it encourages you to actually check out Persona 1, where Innocent Sin didn't really make it like, it's like, who are these random people I'm running into if I'm even getting people's ultimate weapons and shit. Anyway, so let's get into spoilers about Eternal Punishment then, shall we? About the story and stuff. So, well, like I said, you'll visit many familiar locations from Innocent Sin. Many things play out differently at the same time. Well, in Innocent Sin, Adolf Hitler basically showed up and started destroying everything, and the city went into the sky and stuff. Now, sadly, the party does fail at stopping the city taking off into the sky. Those events happen. Now, differently from the prophecy happening in Innocent Sin, a different prophecy is happening in Eternal Punishment. Some BS crap about these ancient dragons that'll purify the world or some shit like that. But the city will eventually get raised in the sky, and the team will be forcibly pressured to have to stop it, or the world ends like it did in Innocent Sin. This time the team will go into the consciousness of man again, and this time they will succeed in their quest. Now, the development of the cast outside of Tatsune is young, either a mix of young to much older adults, but they're all adults outside of him, and it features a lot more of their problems from the adult perspective. Well, all the other Persona games, all teenagers and shit, it was kind of interesting and refreshing to see a lot of the kind of social issues that Persona games like to tackle from an adult perspective. I think that would be an interesting thing to return to. Maybe not necessarily have a full cast of adults, but maybe have one person in the party be an adult, a young adult or something, you know. I think that could kind of freshen up some new ideas in the story a little bit, because, I mean, come on, we're 6 games deep in the main series, and just the main, not counting all the spin-offs, and outside of 2, like, you know, virtually everyone's teenagers. I mean, pretty much the only other real adults is pretty much the Persona 3 cast, because I'm not sure their ages during the arena games and that, but I guess they'll in their more younger adult age by that time, I would think. But like I said, I'm not sure what age they are, so that's probably the only other people that's really, because you don't really ever see any of the older casts ever again outside the arena games. Like, the P3 cast is really the only people that ever return in a way like that. So, the perspective of seeing the adults having problems, that was nice and such. Like I said, they don't go with the whole Hitler thing like Innocent Sin does. It goes with a lot, like the whole dragon thing is kind of like its own made-up version of tarot cards. As far as I know, it's not based on anything in real life, but it's basically, you know, fortune-telling tarot card mumbo-jumbo shit with dragons. So, in a way, that's also an interesting confliction, because, you know, the Persona series uses tarot cards, so that kind of had an interesting theme there. Another thing that was really interesting is the element of Kakage, or however you pronounce this shit, that the evil people gathering from Jokers. It pretty much is the real forced appearance of how we would foresee shadows for the rest of the series. I think it was an interesting way to show how they would be. Because I always took them as, because, you know, like I said, I knew some plot points of the Persona 2 games from reading and learning a bit about them. So I always figured like the shadows were like a effect of the crawling chaos from losing, because, you know, he's like, oh, I might perish here, but I'll always live as long as darkness lives on in the hearts of man, shit. But in a way, it kind of just shows how shadows are really a part of the people. Because, you know, prior we just saw like the kind of ego separation kind of system in Persona 1 and then Innocent Sin. We didn't really see all these blob things of darkness or people's feels and shit as much. I mean, they were starting to develop in Innocent Sin. That was another step in that direction, but I feel like Persona 2 Innocent Sin and Eternal Punishment went more into the direction of showing how we would perceive shadows for the rest of the series, and they just ran with it. It was nice seeing a lot of returning faces from Innocent Sin taking on different roles, good and bad people. And the end was definitely a lot more of a trippy place than how Innocent Sin went. Because Innocent Sin, you just went through the stupid ship thing flying the city, and then you just went to the final battle with the human consciousness. This time, it's actually a dungeon. You go through the human consciousness and then fight the final boss. And I really liked how they did the shadow fights of your party members more in Eternal Punishment, where they were just gate blocking bosses for MacGuffins in Innocent Sin. This time they were in your face before you could fight the final boss. And it introduces a very interesting system where, depending on your choices, you can make the boss stronger or easier. So if you know how this mechanic works, you can even try to fight like the strongest version of the final boss if you wanted. It's an interesting idea of customizing the difficulty of the bosses. And there was something I failed to mention in I Am Setsuna, because I Am Setsuna actually did something very similar where you could actually customize how hard the final boss would be. And it's an interesting idea. I chose all the right choices for the story, so I didn't end up fighting. I ended up fighting the easiest version of the final boss. I guess maybe in a random fly, I could try out, see what the hardest version's like. Probably get my face pounded. Like I said, I was basically in the early 70s by the time I got to the final boss, so considering how much harder he is, I probably need to level up more. But overall, I really enjoyed the game. They both Persona 2s have twisted stories, and as I said with Innocent Sin, I would check out Eternal Punishment. If you're a modern Persona fan, I think you owe it yourself to at least check out the duology of Persona 2. Like I said, with Persona 1, that's a bit of a mixed bag, but Eternal Punishment does make it, well, I think you'd be more interested to try Persona 1. But it, again, as much as Persona 1 did a lot of interesting things, it hasn't aged well. It's aged very badly, in my opinion. The fact they fucked up a lot of shit in the PSP version really makes it a weird choice. But again, I'm not gonna get into that in this. I always win that in the in my review for Persona 1. Overall, though, I definitely recommend checking out the duology. But Eternal Punishment lived up to be a really good sequel. Again, I can't really comment much on the PSP version because outside of some footage, I couldn't really find anyone, like, in the Western sense talking much about differences between it and the PS1 version. So, aside from some additional content and carrying over a similar menu system for combat they did with the PSP version of Innocent Sin, I'm not too sure of what else they really did with the PSP version. But we have the PS1 version. That's probably the better way to play the game, honestly, because, like I said, the menu system in the PSP version of Innocent Sin is clunky and slow, and comparing it with Persona 1, with the so much stuff with a P, with the PS1 version of Eternal Punishment. Like I said, it's an ugly menu in the PS1 versions, but it functions so much better in my opinion. So I would rather have had it just, I don't know, just maybe spruce it up a little bit more. But I can kind of understand why they probably wanted to do the menu system in the PSP game, because, even for me, I've spent my whole life playing shit tons of JRPGs, and it's such a really strange, but it's not hard to understand in my opinion. Like, unless you were like this was like your first or second JRPG, like, I would think you would be able to catch on pretty quick on how it works. It's just different. But it's definitely much more functional in my opinion on the PS1 version. So now, like I said, with Innocent Sin, they did take a lot of the criticisms with what they did with the Persona 1 with Innocent Sin's PSP version. So hopefully maybe they took some of the criticism, because I know I'm not alone in the menu system being a clunky shit for Innocent Sin. Maybe they took some of that criticism and made the menu better in the PSP version of Eternal Punishment. But again, until somebody has some proper information on that, I can't really speak much about that on a personal level. Anyway, overall, those are my thoughts on Persona 2 Eternal Punishment. It's a really good game, and I think you should really go and check it out by any means necessary. But, like I said, if you want to spend that high price for the physical copy, good luck on that. I'd probably just get the Japanese version myself. That's what I would do myself, but that's just me. Which is funny, because I actually got a PS1 version of Innocent Sin way before we even got the PSP version. I got for myself because of that. But then we got the PSP version. Like, well, it's a nice collector's item, I guess. Also to note, actually, just as an extra thing about the physical copy of Persona 2, there is a making of disc, an extra disc that has like interviews and stuff, if that's your cup of tea. Just to note that with it. But outside that, as far as I know, you don't get that with the digital version, as far as I know. I'm not 100% sure on that. I couldn't find out. I did try to look in that. I'm assuming you don't, because it's on its own separate disc, so I'm not really sure how they would do that exactly. But maybe it does, maybe don't. I don't know. I couldn't actually find anyone answer on that. So, anyway, I'll stop blabbing on. So if you feel like you learned anything interesting here, feel free to leave a like, please. And if you feel like you didn't learn anything interesting at all, feel free to leave a dislike guilt-free. And if you got any questions, feel free to leave a comment down below. Or if you're on Twitch, feel free to message me. Until next time, I'll see you out there in 2021. Hopefully there won't be a Grand Cross this year.